Welcome to NTD Good Morning.
Here are today's top stories. President Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the White House yesterday as the two countries work on a formula for a potential tariff deal.
And it's day 8 of the government shutdown. Lawmakers are still at an impasse. Will they pivot to emergency measures to pay troops and air traffic controllers to avoid additional flight delays?
Federal officials are on the ground in Portland and Chicago this week. What Kristi Noem is saying about her meeting with Portland's mayor.
Former FBI Director James Comey is in Virginia today, where he's expected to appear in a federal court for an arraignment on federal charges.
Vivek Ramaswamy says conservatives face a critical fork in the road after Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination, as Turning Point USA shows up at Montana State University.
The price of gold hitting an all-time high. It's on course to have one of its best performances since 1979.
This is NTD Good Morning. Live from our global headquarters in New York City, here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Today is Wednesday, October 8th. You're watching NTD Good Morning. In today's top news, President Trump teasing upcoming cuts to government programs as his White House finds a creative way to keep funding important food aid.
NTD's White House correspondent R-S.D brings us the story.
You want to know the truth? This is like a kamikaze attack. They have nothing to lose.
A stalemate is continuing as both Republicans and Democrats appear locked in their own positions. The White House on Tuesday announcing that it will use tariff revenue to continue funding federal food aid for mothers and young children, which otherwise will soon run out. Meanwhile, President Trump, again blaming Democrats for the shutdown, says he will soon unveil permanent cuts to some government programs.
But we have a lot of things that we're going to eliminate and permanently eliminate. Because of the shutdown, which I think they made a big mistake, we're able to take out billions and billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse, and they've handed it, on a silver platter.
The White House has warned that thousands of federal workers could be permanently laid off due to the lapse in funding. It comes as a White House memo floats the idea of not paying furloughed federal workers for the time that they did not work during the shutdown. President Trump says it will depend on who we're talking about.
I can tell you this, the Democrats have put a lot of people in great risk and jeopardy, but it really depends on who you're talking about. But for the most part, we're going to take care of our people. There are some people that really don't deserve to be taken care of, and we'll take care of them in a different way.
Meanwhile, on trade, the president meeting with the Canadian Prime Minister at the White House. While the two leaders praise each other, they both acknowledge that natural business conflicts, given the two countries' proximity and also similar industries, are preventing a tariff deal and causing a tariff stalemate.
But we're competing for the same business. He wants to make cars, we want to make cars, and we're in competition.
So then what's holding things up? If he's a great man and you want to do a deal with Canada, why aren't you?
Because I want to be a great man, too.
The U.S. still has a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, as well as other tariffs on some cars, lumber, and copper. That said, President Trump says the two countries are now working on a formula for a potential tariff deal. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
And on Capitol Hill, lawmakers remain at an impasse on reopening the government. Some are proposing emergency pay for certain workers. NTD's Melina Weisskopf joins us now to discuss. Melina, good morning. Will lawmakers pivot from the funding resolution for the moment and try to pass emergency legislation instead?
Hi, good morning, Steph. That is certainly possible, depending on whether or not both Senate Leader John Thune and House Leader Mike Johnson agree to it. Right now, there aren't any votes scheduled on government funding bills for today. Instead, Senate Leader John Thune is using their floor time for nominee confirmations and other measures after both the Republican and Democrat proposals to fund the government failed, of course, 4 times. We saw that this week and last week. So they're kind of taking a break from that. House lawmakers right now are not in session. Speaker Johnson yesterday said he was considering to put this type of bill that you're describing up that would pay would provide pay to military troops and air traffic controllers. But at the same time, the Senate leader says it's not needed. So they're not in agreement on this at the moment. Listen to what they both said.
We're monitoring it day by day. I'm certainly open to that. We've done it in the past. We want to make sure that our troops are paid. I have colleagues like Congresswoman Jen Kiggins of Virginia, who has a big military district. She's already filed legislation to pay our troops.
And honestly, I mean, you don't need that. You don't need to. Obviously, there are certain constituencies, many of whom are going to be impacted in a very negative way by what's happening here. But the simplest way to end it is not try to exempt this group or that group or that group. It's to get the government open.
So like we just saw there, it does look like there are different opinions between the two leaders right now. Maybe Senate Leader John Thune sees this pay issue as a better pressure point to get those 5 remaining Democrat votes that he needs in the Senate to fold and ultimately pass that Republican bill to fund the government stuff.
So for those who are furloughed right now, there's also this question of back pay for federal workers. What's the dispute on that front?
Right. Like you just heard from my colleague, R-S.D, this started after a White House draft memo circulated yesterday that calls into question whether non-essential federal employees who are furloughed right now, they're currently not working due to the shutdown, are entitled to back pay. Democrats on Capitol Hill were quick to push back on this, but it is the law since 2019 that those federal workers that are furloughed during a shutdown will get back pay, though some top Republicans, including the House Speaker, are saying that it's questionable under the law. Listen to both sides.
And the law is clear. Every single furloughed federal employee is entitled to back pay. Period. Full stop. The law is clear, and we will make sure that that law is followed.
There are some legal analysts who are saying that that may not be appropriate or necessary in terms of the law requiring that back pay be provided. So I'm sure that'll be there will be a lot of discussion about that. But there are legal analysts who think that that is not something that government should do. That, if that is true, that should turn up the urgency and the necessity of the Democrats doing the right thing here.
All I'm saying is most Americans say if you're working, you should get paid. If you're not, that's a different question.
All right. Thanks for those insights and this update this morning. NTD congressional correspondent, good to speak with you as always, Melina Weisskopf.
And federal officials are on the ground in Portland and Chicago this week as the Trump administration moves to deploy federal law enforcement. Local leaders are speaking out against it, but Washington says it's necessary. Here's more on that.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited Portland Tuesday, warning local leaders she could send 4 times as many federal officers if the city doesn't provide additional security. She said her meeting with Mayor Keith Wilson went poorly.
And I'm so extremely disappointed. He's continuing to play politics, did not commit to any of those promises, and said that he'd give me an answer by tomorrow.
Mayor Keith Wilson said Portland continues to manage public safety responsibly, despite federal claims of chaos. He added that federal officers must meet the same standards as the city's police. Noem also visited the local ICE facility where protesters have previously clashed with law enforcement. On Sunday, a federal judge temporarily blocked the deployment of National Guard members to Portland for the second time. The White House has appealed the ruling. Oregon Governor Tina Kotek says she's happy Noem is on the ground to assess the situation and push back against the secretary's statements.
As governor, my job is to stand up for Oregonians, protect them, and just have a direct conversation with the federal administration about what is happening on the ground here in Portland. No one in Oregon is interested in seeing military policing on our streets when people are protesting peacefully.
In Chicago, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche toured the local field office Tuesday. They emphasized a whole-of-government approach to target violent crime and illegal immigration.
It was just, for me personally, rejuvenating to see the operational ground-level support that every single 3-letter agency here is doing, driving towards the same mission.
Texas National Guard troops were seen settling at an Army Reserve Center about 55 miles from Chicago, despite opposition from local leaders and a federal lawsuit to block the deployment. Texas Governor Greg Abbott wrote on X, "The elite Texas National Guard are on the ground and ready to go." Governor J.B. Pritzker says the president is using soldiers as pawns. But Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says federal law enforcement is stepping in because local leaders are failing to address crime.
What we saw was I think, the effect of the leadership of the state and of this city basically giving a free pass to criminals and to domestic terrorists to do anything they want in the city.
But Chicago's mayor strongly disagrees, saying federal actions are endangering civilians.
The federal government is out of control. This is one of the most dangerous times in our nation's history.
The federal judge will hear arguments from Illinois and Chicago on Thursday. Meanwhile, the Memphis Safe Task Force, a joint effort of more than 20 local, state, and federal agencies, have been actively deployed to work alongside local police in the city. A group of National Guard commanders is set to arrive on Friday, although those troops are not expected to take part in law enforcement.
Senate Republicans have confirmed more than 100 of President Trump's nominees to key government posts in one go. The 51-47 vote yesterday, largely along party lines, approved dozens of ambassadorships, U.S. attorneys, and senior officials across departments like the Treasury, Energy, and Defense.
Among those reappointed was Paul Atkins. He'll stay on as SEC chair through 2031. And Brittany Panuccio joins the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, giving Republicans a new majority there. Majority Whip John Barrasso praised the move, saying Republicans had ended what he called the Democrats' confirmation blockade after months of delay.
Next, former FBI Director James Comey will appear before a federal court today to be arraigned. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez is outside the courtroom in Virginia with the latest. Good to have you with us this morning, Luis. Tell us what we can expect from today's proceedings.
Of course, Steph. Well, as you mentioned, we're here outside the Albert Bryan Federal Courthouse of the Eastern District of Virginia at 10 a.m. today. We are expecting to see former FBI Director James Comey be formally arraigned. So Judge Michael Nachmanoff will read the charges to the defendant, who is going to be represented by lawyer Patrick Fitzgerald, and of course his rights. We will also learn if he'll be released on bail or not. And this is important because this happened just a few days after the formal indictment of former FBI Director James Comey on September 25th. He's being charged with 2 felony counts, one of providing a false statement to Congress, and the second one is for obstructing a congressional investigation. This refers to testimony that former FBI Director James Comey gave to the Senate Judiciary Committee back in September of 2020. Now, the dates are important because the statute of limitations for perjury charges are 5 years. So the indictment came just before that statute of limitation expired. Now, very, very big day is, of course, former FBI Director James Comey has been involved in several political scandals just as recently as last year when he posted an Instagram picture saying Trump 86, which many Republicans and conservatives read as a call to assassinate the president. So a controversial figure facing criminal charges and today being formally arraigned.
And Luis, what are Democrats and Republicans saying about the charges?
Well, Democratic lawmakers, particularly yesterday during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi, were accusing the Department of Justice and the Trump administration of political persecution, that this is a politically motivated trial against former FBI Director James Comey, who, of course, has been in the ire of the president as of late. But Republicans actually argue completely the opposite, that the charges being levied against James Comey are the least that he's being accused of. Yesterday, we learned during the Senate Judiciary Committee that Chairman Chuck Grassley revealed more information on Operation Arctic Frost. And Steph, this is an FBI operation that allegedly took place under the Comey leadership of the FBI and during the previous administration, during the Biden administration, that was spying not only on over 50 conservative activist groups, but also on at least 8 Republican lawmakers. So some people, and especially in the Republican side, are expecting other charges to be levied against former FBI Director James Comey for, of course, his involvement in what is called or known known today as the Russia hoax and the Steele dossier, but also this Arctic frost operation. And yesterday we heard from Attorney General Pam Bondi that an official investigation has been opened on these whistleblower allegations that the FBI under the Biden administration and under the leadership of former FBI Director James Comey had been spying on the political opponents of the Biden administration. Back to you, Steph.
All right, Luis, and it does look to be just the beginning. Observers are expecting many more, but certainly there will be more updates today, and we look forward to hearing from you. NTD Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez, thank you. And following yesterday's Senate Judiciary Committee oversight hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi, we're joined now by Cully Stimson, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Good to have you with us this morning, Cully. Let's start with the phone records of Republican senators and House lawmaker that were obtained as part of Jack Smith's J6 investigation. While the phone records were obtained via court order, several Republican senators suggest the actions of the Biden Justice Department were criminal. Where does the law stand on this kind of action?
Well, they did get a court order, and they were produced as a result of a grand jury investigation. But this is something that's never been done before. And so even though they didn't get the contents of the calls, they did get who called whom and then how long those calls took place. And they took place during a very specific time during Jack Smith's investigation. So I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg on where this is going to lead. I know Kash Patel, the FBI director, has said he has fired the people who engaged in this activity and started these call records. So I think this is just the beginning of the story, not the end.
And leading on from that director, former FBI director James Comey's being arraigned today in a related case, what do you expect his legal team to argue, and what will the prosecution argue?
Well, the government clearly believes that they have enough evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and that he obstructed justice and he lied when he testified in front of Congress. He has said he's looking forward to his day in court, which is a lot of defendants say. I think that's always a white lie. No one's looking forward to a day in criminal court when you're the defendant. But look, they have to tie the statement he made under oath, in particular to Senator Cruz, and whether he, one, lied, two, when he said it, he knew it was a lie, and three, to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, intended for it to be deceptive when he made the statement. That's the standard under the statute. And so the government has its work to cut out, and they're going to say, look, Senator Cruz, the defense is going to be, look, Senator Cruz's question, if it even was a question, was a long, rambling paragraph. We don't even know what he was really asking, and our client clearly told the truth when he said, I stand by my statement from before. So perjury cases are few and far between, and typically they are best and easily proved when you say, is your name Frank? No, my name's Steve, when your name is Frank. That's clearly an easy question and an easy lie. This is more complicated, so we'll see where it goes.
Okay, let's turn back to yesterday's hearing. Democrats pressed Pam Bondi on President Trump's influence in the DOJ. How do you see those concerns and Bondi's response?
I don't think we've ever really seen a hearing like this before. A lot of these hearings are sort of performative. The senators talk over the witness, and the witness sort of answers the question in a calm demeanor, and everyone plays their part in the play. Here, I think the AG came loaded for bear, and she was not going to put up with any of their guff. I think, to me, the most substantive, interesting part of the hearing, besides the disclosure of these phone calls, which we started the program with, is Senator Eric Schmitt. Remember, Eric Schmitt was the Attorney General in Missouri at the time the Biden regime was censoring and forcing social media companies to censor. He wrote a book about it. He was the Attorney General. That case actually went to the Supreme Court, Murphy against Missouri. But I think if you want to sort of understand all the political fights have been happening between Democrats and Republicans since Trump first came to office, it's synthesized in the 4 hours of hearing yesterday. It played out in real time, and Pam Bondi held her own. She is not a featherweight. She is a counterpuncher, and she proved it over and over again.
So there as you've been pointing out, there have been allegations actually in both directions during that hearing about the weaponization of the government. What do you think it will take for the United States to enjoy more trust in our institutions at this point in time when it's got such intense disagreements on this front?
Look, politics ain't beanbag, as the old saying goes. And for the most part, people outside the Beltway, they don't hang on the statements that are going on in Congress. I bet most Americans don't even know there was a hearing on Capitol Hill yesterday. They're focused on their kids' soccer games and homework assignments and their jobs and all the rest of it. I think a lot of Americans hear that there's a government shutdown, but it doesn't really affect them. And so, look, the politics is ever present in our life if you want to pay attention to it. But most Americans don't pay attention to it because they sort of tune it out. Now, I think for those of us who pay attention to these things, that hearing yesterday was unique. And it sort of crystallizes the real fights between clearly the Biden-Harris administration forcing social media companies to suppress speech they didn't like. You see the Crossfire Hurricane. You see a lot of these other sort of long-running political disputes play out in that hearing yesterday. There's a lot of baggage that was redredged up during that hearing. But at the end of the day, is it going to make a difference? In my opinion, no, it's not going to make a difference. What's going to make a difference, I think, in the short term is what happens with this information on Arctic frost that Senator Grassley spooled out yesterday. Because I think, when you're subpoenaing the phone records of United States senators, that's a bridge too far in many people's minds. And I think this is just the beginning of that story.
Yeah, and those documents just became known to the public Monday. So this, as you say, just the beginning. And we'll certainly be hearing more. Thank you so much, Cully Simpson. Good to speak with you.
Thanks for having me.
Still to come, negotiations over the war in Gaza resume today.
Hamas terrorists say they're willing to consider a deal to end the war.
And authorities say they've arrested over a dozen people connected to the Mexican mafia federal after local law enforcement conducted raids in the Los Angeles area. Those stories after this. Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. Talks aimed at ending the Israel-Hamas war resume today in Egypt.
Trump's peace plan calls for an immediate release of hostages, Hamas's disarmament, and placing Gaza under international administration.
The Hamas terror group said yesterday it was ready to reach a deal based on President Trump's plan, but it still has demands.
Top Hamas leader told Egyptian state media the group wants guarantees to end the war and to ensure it's not repeated.
In a sign the talks were gaining momentum, Qatar said its prime minister would travel to Egypt to join negotiations today.
Trump's Mideast envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are also expected to join the talks today. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he's cautiously optimistic about a deal.
President Trump, meanwhile, hosted Edan Alexander, the last American hostage freed from Hamas terrorists, to the Oval Office yesterday, the 2-year anniversary of the terror attack.
Alexander is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen from New Jersey. He was held captive for 584 days in the Gaza Strip before Trump helped secure his release on May 12th.
The president also welcomed the family of Omer Nutra, a victim of the terror attack whose body is still being held hostage.
Speaking to the press, Omer's father, Ronan Nutra, said he reminded President Trump of the importance of returning all bodies for burial. His son Omer was a 21-year-old native of New York.
U.S. Central Command forces announced on X yesterday they conducted strikes in Syria last week.
This resulted in the killing of a senior al-Qaeda-affiliated attack planner who was also a member of the al-Qaeda-affiliated terrorist group Ansar al-Islam.
It's still unclear where in Syria the al-Qaeda-affiliated member was killed.
CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper said the U.S. remains ready to disrupt terrorist activity in the Middle East to defend the homeland and their allies and partners.
Earlier this year, CENTCOM forces killed a senior al-Qaeda-affiliated leader in northwest Syria.
The U.S. military also began withdrawing troops from Syria in April, looking to reduce their presence in the area to fewer than just 1,000 service members. And authorities say residents of Southern California can rest a little easier after raids that targeted the Mexican mafia. NTD's David Lamb has the story.
On Tuesday, federal and local authorities say they conducted multiple raids in San Pedro, California, targeting the Mexican mafia. Los Angeles PD and the FBI arrested multiple members and associates of the Rancho San Pedro, or R-S.D gang, which officials call one of the most active and violent gangs in the Los Angeles harbor area. 13 people were arrested as a result of the multi-year investigation across several agencies. Authorities say the gang is responsible for criminal activities and violence. The FBI says the R.S.D gang operates under the control of Mexican mafia members who are incarcerated in California state prisons. The LA County District Attorney said today marks one of the best days to make that point crystal clear to these violent crime organizations that we will stop them. During their operation, authorities found firearms, ammunition, parts of so-called ghost guns, fentanyl, and drug supplies. If convicted, most of the federal suspects could face a maximum sentence of life in prison. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
And for the fifth straight month, the Trump administration says it has not released any illegal immigrants into the country. The Department of Homeland Security said more than 9,000 illegal immigrants were released into the U.S. in September 2024. Homeland Security officials say under Trump, southern border crossings have fallen to the lowest level in 55 years, with fewer than 238,000 illegal immigrants crossing the border in the past year. Next, the role of AI drone technology in the Russia-Ukraine war has signified a turning point in modern military operations, and it's central to a new competition between America and China. And while military applications are grabbing most of the attention, there are many other emerging uses, including search and rescue, construction, and logistics that could also be transformed by new drone and AI technology. In this next sponsored segment, Cameron Chell, CEO and president of Dragonfly Incorporated, joins us live now to discuss the future of drones. Cameron, thank you so much for joining us. Just yesterday, the Epoch Times published an in-depth news analysis on the central role of drones in modern warfare. What are your perspectives on the importance of U.S. dominance in this theater and the current capabilities of China?
There is likely nothing that's more impactful now in terms of the asymmetric ability for one side of a conflict to deal with the other side of a conflict. If we look closely at what's happened in Ukraine, the drones and AI have been the determining factor for those Ukrainian fighters to be able to defend themselves and actually even make gains against the oppressor. So the U.S. has obviously taken note of this and is now very aggressively moving towards that capability. Previously, typically in an area of active conflict, the most important aspect is owning the airspace. And that's generally done by organizations or countries, that have billion-dollar platforms, manned aircraft, integrated systems with satellites, etc. Now, quite simply, you can put up a number of drones, and from 5,000 feet down, you can own that airspace. So this ability and this requirement to own the airspace is what's driving this low-cost alternative and fastly changing capability into the U.S. forces now.
Yes, and as one of the pioneers of the industry, can you share how your company, Dragonfly, which is on the NASDAQ, is capitalizing on what is a huge surge in demand for drones and the accompanying software that powers it all?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. And Dragonfly is the oldest drone manufacturer in the world. We've been doing this since in Category 1 drones, and we've been doing this for the last 27 years. So recently, we just received an order and were selected by the U.S. Army to provide FPVs, so first-person viewer drones, to the U.S. Army in overseas locations. Not only that, but we were also selected to help the Army build manufacturing plants themselves for these drones, utilizing Dragonfly drone technology and expertise to train those personnel to be able to manufacture, maintenance, and modify drones on the fly. Previously, procurement cycles within the U.S. Army took years and years. And in fact, even getting to this point has taken us a couple of years. However, what the data shows is that drone technology evolves every 10 days. In the Ukraine conflict, for example. So the U.S. Army needs to be and has positioned itself to be in a situation working with Dragonfly where every 10 days that technology is being iterated, upgraded, concepts of operation, mission profiles are being changed.
Wow, I can remember when a software release would take 3 to 5 years. Now it's every 10 days. Can you give an estimation on what you see as the financial impact of the drone industry on the U.S. economy and potentially beyond that?
You know, I was a dot-com kid, and I remember how we always talked about how this was going to be, twice as big than anybody could ever imagine. And the reality was, it took about twice as long or so for the internet to actually proliferate to the way we originally imagined. We thought it would take 5 to 7 years, and it's taken about 10 to 15 years. But it impacts absolutely every single aspect of our life today. And so the reality of what happened with the introduction of the internet is it took about twice as long, but it was 100, maybe even 1,000 times more impactful on the economy. We see the exact same thing with drones. Drones are really a robot, and AI-enabled robots, especially ones that work in the aerial space, the 3D space, can collect data, deliver logistics, provide services, and do things that greater than any other robot subset. So we completely see this as, certainly it's taken twice as long. We've been here for 27 years, working at this, but it will be 1,000 times bigger. It probably, if not one of the largest impacts in causing a deflationary effect or fighting against inflation because of the ROI. If we even just think in terms of what happens with logistics or the lower cost of conflict that's now happening, we see these real world examples of how the costs are dropped significantly. The efficiencies are gained incredibly with the use of drones.
Yeah, it's so funny. I can remember playing around with my son 10 years ago on a soccer field, and now that's like completely passé, and we're actually seeing real life applications and far beyond the military. Dragonfly actually has a drone featured in the Smithsonian. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's one of our, thank you again for asking that. It's really the ethos of our entire company. So a Dragonfly drone was the first drone that was credited with saving a human life. And this happened when a single car accident in a -40 weather, the person had a head injury, wandered from the car, was missing for 6 or 7 hours. The search parties couldn't find them. They called the local authorities, who happened to have a Dragonfly drone with a thermal camera on it. And they put the drone up, and within 20 minutes found this individual who had hypothermia, and they were fortunate enough to save his life. That drone was credited with being the first drone that ever saved a human life. And that drone and story and example now sit on permanent display in the Smithsonian.
Wow, what a great story showing the potential for this technology to better our lives. Obviously, what's front and center with the Russia-Ukraine war and the 10-day dev cycle is the military application. But as you said, it really could affect everything in our lives, from how we get packages to really a variety of use cases. So as we start to wrap up, I actually want to throw it over to you. You have a crystal ball. Like, what does our life look like, in a few decades with drones as an everyday part of our lives? Is it, are we, is it taking out our trash? What does life look like for the ordinary person?
Yeah, it'll be as pervasive as an iPhone today, drones in our life. And while that might seem, quite disruptive to the current generation, you think about 10 years from now, 10-year-olds, when they're 20, this will just be normal for them as to what's happening. And so whether that drone is doing something as what may seem as silly as walking your dog or accompanying your kids on their walk to school, or protecting your neighborhoods, or providing data to construction workers, or real-time data for things that are happening inside our infrastructure, or ensuring security along the border. All of these are applications that will just be normal and automated for us, because they can work in a way that's unintrusive to us. And it really takes the cost of labor and the cost of collecting information down significantly. An immediate use case that we see today is that Dragonfly, along with Brigham Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, we're running their delivery program. So they're using drones now being implemented to deliver things like test case, pharmaceuticals, even organs are on the docket to their clinics. So they serve about 1,200 clinics in the Boston area. And their delivery times are going from potentially hours or not even at all because of the challenging traffic situations there, down to even minutes or 15 or 20-minute increments. And so even just that cost saving, that efficiency, the emergency response capability, these are all things where the ROI is just so impactful that you can't not be moving in this direction.
Yeah, there are so many opportunities for human betterment. It's indeed exciting times. Cameron Chell, CEO, President of Dragonfly, thanks for joining us and sharing your experience.
Thanks for your time.
Now to Tennessee, where Matt Van Epps won the Republican primary for the state's 7th congressional district. He'll face Democrat Afton Bain in December in a special election. They're running to replace former Congressman Mark Green, who resigned earlier this year. The former Commissioner of General Services said yesterday he came out on top after a key endorsement from President Trump, a boost that helped him surge past 10 other Republican contenders. After the win, Van Epps thanked voters across Middle and West Tennessee, calling it a landslide for his Trump-endorsed campaign. He vowed to stand with Trump in Congress to advance an America First agenda focused on illegal immigration and veteran care, among other issues. The 7th District leans strongly Republican, giving Van Epps a clear advantage heading into the December 2nd general election. But his opponent, Afton Bain, a social worker and community organizer, says her campaign proves Democrats in the Deep South aren't done yet.
And coming up, Vivek Ramaswamy says conservatives face a critical fork in the wake of Charlie Kirk's tragic assassination as Turning Point USA shows up at Montana State University. We're going to have that and more. We'll be right back. Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. I'm Carrie Dunst. If you're just joining us now, here are some of today's top headlines. The government shutdown enters day 8 as lawmakers remain at an impasse on passing a budget bill. Speaker Mike Johnson said yesterday he's considering putting a bill up that would provide pay to military troops and air traffic controllers. But Senate Majority Leader John Thune, he says it's not needed at the moment. A White House draft memo that was circulating was called into question after stating that whether or not non-essential federal employees who are furloughed currently are entitled to back pay. And federal officials are in Portland and Chicago this week. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited Portland, warning she could send more federal troops if local leaders don't provide additional security. Over in Chicago, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche highlighted a coordinated federal effort on crime and immigration. Officials in both cities have pushed back against the federal government. And President Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney at the White House yesterday. The two leaders praised each other, acknowledging the natural business conflicts given the two countries' proximity to each other and their competing industries. The U.S. still has a 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, as well as other tariffs on cars, lumber, and copper. Trump says the two countries are working now on a formula for a potential tariff deal. And thousands packed Montana State University's Brick Breeden Fieldhouse yesterday for a Turning Point USA event honoring the late Charlie Kirk. Governor Greg Gianforte led a prayer for unity, while Ohio gubernatorial candidate Vivek Ramaswamy urged young conservatives to defend free speech and America's founding principles. The night ended with a spirited Q&A. Those are this morning's top headlines. With that, Steph, over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Carrie. And as you've just been hearing, thousands gathered at Montana State University's Brick Breeden Fieldhouse last night for that Turning Point USA event. All there, eager for a night of political discussion. We've got NTD's Daniel Monahan on that story with key takeaways from the gathering, which featured, as you've been hearing, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy.
Doors opened at 5 p.m. and students filled the 3,300 seats quickly. Many were waiting from early morning to secure front row spots. Those in attendance honored Charlie Kirk.
Turn us away from divisiveness, separation, and violence.
Candidate for Ohio Governor Vivek Ramaswamy called on those in attendance to remember the tragedy of Charlie Kirk's assassination.
For years, college students with conservative views, like many of you, were taught to shut up, sit down, and keep their views to themselves.
Ramaswamy says Charlie Kirk helped usher in a new dawn in America.
Young conservatives, like many of you, started to feel free to speak in the open again as proud Americans. You showed up at the ballot box last November in unprecedented droves to re-elect Donald Trump to his second term as U.S. president. You all did that.
The entrepreneur says conservatives stand at a fork in the road for the future of the conservative movement.
Do we play the left's game? Silencing, canceling, punishing, authorizing the government to pick winners and losers in the private sector? Or do we stick to the principles of the American founding? Freedom, merit, the rule of law, the pursuit of excellence. It is a fork in the road for our movement, and I believe the answer is crystal clear. We don't care about owning the libs, not anymore. We care about owning responsibility for saving our country. It is not just about what we stand against, but what we actually stand for. Individual, family, nation, and God. Beats race, gender, sexuality, and climate.
The evening wrapped up with high energy and a spirited Q&A session. A young attendee asked Ramaswamy whether his Hindu faith conflicted with conservative values or Charlie Kirk's message. Ramaswamy pointed out that he's running for governor of Ohio and not pastor of Ohio. He invited the young man on stage, gave him a copy of the U.S. Constitution, and had him read Article 6.
No religious test shall ever be required as qualification to any office or public trust under the United States.
Turning Point USA, founded by Charlie Kirk, says each stop is a chance to honor Charlie's mission and keep the fight alive. The organization says free speech is only free if people use their voices. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Great report there from Daniel. Now, people around the world marked the 2-year anniversary yesterday of the October 7th Hamas terrorist attack on Israel.
Yeah, the group had killed over 1,200 people and took over 250 hostages back to the Gaza Strip. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
Guys ready?
On Tuesday, October 7th, U.S. Congress members marked the 2-year anniversary of the deadly Hamas terrorist attack on Israel.
It's hard to believe that it's been 2 years since Hamas terrorists brutally raped, burned alive, decapitated, and murdered more than 1,200 innocent babies, children, women and men, and elderly, including dozens of Americans. The deadliest attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
And a woman who was held hostage by Hamas and later released continues to plead for the release of the 48 remaining hostages, including her boyfriend, Matan.
I'm here fighting for you, breathing for you, holding on to the hope that maybe in the darkness you can feel me. Matan, stay strong. Don't lose hope. Your mom, sister, our dog Nuni, and I are all waiting and fighting for you. Thank you.
And in Israel, residents paused for a moment as memorial sirens sounded across the country, including at the site of the Nova Music Festival, where Hamas terrorists killed hundreds of people at a concert that day. A mother whose daughter was there shared her thoughts.
Nothing else is important. Nothing else is can be complete because she's my heart, and they took it from me. I can never be happy, complete, ever again.
Another woman in Tel Aviv said she had family living near the Gaza Strip when Hamas attacked the border communities.
And I think it took about 15 hours for us to hear from all our family members. So we really feel for everyone here who's still waiting for their family to come home.
The mother of 2 hostages held by Hamas for 2 years now spoke in front of a crowd of people in Tel Aviv.
I want to hug them, to kiss them, all the kisses I haven't given for 2 years. Enough with the war. Enough with everything. Enough!
Meanwhile, in Kenya, residents held a pro-Israel march on the anniversary of the October 7th attacks.
Freedom for Israel! Kenya is for Israel! We stand with Benjamin Netanyahu! We pray for them and every believer!
And in Brazil, an NGO set up a memorial on the beach to honor the victims of October 7th. The president of the NGO said that the Hamas attacks were crimes against humanity. And he said, quote, "We can't remain silent unless we want to leave future generations a world that's worse than the one we received." Jason Perry, NTD News.
A new congressional report finds loopholes in the global chip industry are helping China expand its semiconductor capabilities.
Despite years of restrictions, Chinese companies legally purchased more than $38 billion in advanced chip-making equipment last year, fueling its military modernization.
The House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party says U.S., Chinese, and Dutch firms are still selling sophisticated tools to China needed for both commercial and military purposes. Lawmakers warn these sales exploit gaps between strategic goals and commercial activity, calling for broader export controls.
China aims for a fully self-sufficient chip supply by 2030, stockpiling technology while domestic production lags. The report stresses the U.S. must maintain its, quote, choke point advantage over China's chip industry to protect the national security.
Up ahead, gold hits a new milestone, climbing past the $4,000 mark for the first time.
What analysts say this could mean. A bipartisan effort in the Senate aims to counter the threat China poses to the U.S. in the Indo-Pacific. Senators say China's activities in the region are illegal, coercive, and aggressive. We're going to have that story and more. We'll be right back after this break.
Welcome back to NTD Good Morning. A bipartisan effort in the Senate aims to counter the threat China poses to the U.S. and its allies in the Indo-Pacific. A Foreign Relations Subcommittee is investigating illegal activities by the Chinese Communist Party. NTD's Ariane Pazdar has the takeaways from yesterday's hearing.
It is time to call out Beijing's behavior for what it actually is. It's illegal, coercive, aggressive, and deceptive.
Republican Senator Pete Ricketts highlights the threat posed by China in the Indo-Pacific, warning that the U.S. must take action. Democratic Senator Chris Coons agrees, saying China is America's main national security challenge.
For years, the national security establishment has correctly identified China as our central national security challenge. Today's hearing will explore China's gray zone activities, which are increasingly offering Beijing an asymmetric advantage.
The senator says such gray zone activities have been ignored by too many administrations in the past because they fall below the threshold of armed conflict, despite violating international law. He gave a few examples.
In Australia, a U.S. treaty ally, for the first time, we saw a large Chinese naval task group conduct a full circumnavigation of the continent and live fire exercises with no warning, an enormous show of force intended to intimidate Australia and send a signal to other regional states. Against Taiwan, record levels of incursion by the PLA into Taiwanese airspace and its economic zones, brazen election interference, cutting undersea cables, and much more.
A witness at Tuesday's hearing said the solution to the problem is to develop a comprehensive national counter-strategy. That's by using diplomatic, informational, economic, legal, cyber, and security instruments against China. Senator Ricketts asked the witness, a military veteran, how the U.S. could implement these countermeasures.
When you say strategy, help us understand specifically what you mean we should be doing.
Chairman Ricketts, thank you. I think it begins with having somebody whose responsibility it is to organize the campaign. China knows how to fill in all of those gaps in our bureaucracy. So however it is that we're organized, they will organize a counter-campaign utilizing their sort of fusion, their civil-military fusion organization to sort of push into the gaps. And so we need somebody whose job it is to build the counter-ICAD strategy and then to get everybody together.
But despite China's ongoing aggression, many say the Communist Party is not as strong as it portrays itself to be. Another witness described China's many weak points.
What are some specific steps that we could do that would remind Communist China that they've got vulnerabilities as well?
Let's not forget that the Chinese are almost wholly dependent on their food needs from other countries. These are countries where the United States has tremendous diplomatic leverage. Dr. Ratner mentioned energy vulnerabilities. These are pretty severe and intense for the Chinese. But also, we have to remember that the Chinese economy is currently in a state of disarray.
He added that China's economy largely depends on exports to other countries and that this economic model is highly vulnerable to sanctions. He says the US needs to make clear that Chinese state-owned entities and banks could become targets of US financial sanctions. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Now, on to some economic news. Gold has surged past the $4,000 mark for the first time, setting a new record.
Here's economist Daniel Altman on why gold remains so appealing.
Gold is going up because investors are looking for an inflation hedge. They're worried about the huge debts that are being run up by major economies around the world, and they see the possibility for devaluation of some of those currencies. If those currencies are devalued as a result of rising inflation, then investors are going to need a safe haven, and gold is one of those possibilities.
I think 4,000 is an important number for gold to get through and trade above it. And with that happening, I think that's just going to move the bar further ahead, that we could be starting to think about gold at 4,200, 4,300, and 4,500 in the coming 6 months.
So gold futures have soared 52% this year. Analysts say that expected lower U.S. interest rates have made precious metals more attractive.
Still, some strategists are advising caution. Speaking to the Epoch Times, Adam Turnquist from LPL Financial said gold is trading above its fair value. Well, there you go. If you're looking for a investment tip of the day, that might be it.
Yeah, it's certainly good to keep up with what is happening, at least as the change is so rapid.
Yes, and I know for the last couple of years, through all the uncertainty, we've seen a lot of folks interested in gold, thinking at some point it'd reach its ceiling, but it just keeps going up. Even silver is also on its way up. So it shows that people are looking for safe harbor, despite all of the positivity coming out of the U.S. with the Trump administration's economic policies. So.
All right, stay with us. We've got much more coming right up in the next hour.